I went from my office in downtown LA to the courthouse to watch the victim in the social media addiction trial that's happening against Meta and YouTube testify. I saw her therapist testify before her, and then I watched the actual girl who's at the center of this addiction case testify. It was wild. First of all, let me start by saying this girl has had a terrible life. This girl has had a terrible life. Let me see if you can see her. Let's see. Social media addiction. This girl, her name, she goes by KGM, but essentially oh my God. Well, this is her. They're not going to show her face, but this is her walking into the courthouse. So this girl in the pink has had an atrocious life. She is the one suing for social media addiction, claiming that social media is responsible for her poor mental health. Let me tell you a little bit about this girl that I learned. We all learned. Abused by her mother, physically, verbally. Her father was abusive as well. She was beaten when she didn't get math problems right. She was so upset that she physically self-harmed herself with a knife. Her sister attempted her own life. I can't even begin to explain, like, her father abandoned her and basically stopped responding to her, like would blow her off beginning in 5th grade. I think he left at some point as well. I don't know if he left maybe when she was younger, but by 5th grade, he was out of the picture. This girl, she was poor. She's working at Walmart now doing online orders. Her mother told her that testifying and being the victim in this social media case would get them rich. So anyway, I'm just saying this girl's had a tough life, okay? I feel really bad for her. She's only 20 years old. She is, again, abuse. She was abused growing up. There's no other way to put it. Her mother, the videos that they played because she recorded videos of her mother abusing her, screaming at her, saying horrible things. Her mother at one point was weighing her almost daily, monitoring her intake, making comments about her weight. I mean, it is so sad. The only thing that seems to have like kind of actually helped her was video editing, which she got into through social media. So she was doing social media video edits of like games and she was making like fan content. And they're trying to argue that sort of her watching gaming videos and lip gloss review videos when she was like 9 is what led to her poor mental health, and not everything else that's happened to her. And you know what's really messed up as well is now the mother is back in the picture. And now, after all that 20 years of abuse, her mother is now, I think she's living with her mother again. And she's like, oh no, now I have a good relationship with the mother. Because the mother is like, ooh, payday's coming, right? So it's horrible. And I think that this lawsuit in itself is a form of abuse by the mother, and this controlling and having her daughter sit up there. I mean, it's just horrible. But it's also just like crazy. Like, it's just like social, like, I don't know. The whole thing has been insane. What's made me so crazy is, so I actually was there, right? I watched all of this stuff happen. I'm in the courtroom myself and many other reporters. And some reporters are just covering it pretty sort of neutrally. I mean, like NBC News just says the first plaintiff to take a major social media company's trial is set to take the stand and speak about the harms that she says the tech platforms inflicted on her mental health as a child. By the way, she doesn't actually know any harms, and the harms are not documented. They have all her therapy notes, and they had the therapist. And even the therapist says that that this girl never even brought up social media as a harmful thing, other than to say that like she has social anxiety. And so like she was also relentlessly bullied at school. And so it would like hurt her feelings to like see people out, on Instagram having fun without her. And when she had a miserable life. So, it's crazy. What I will say is that her lawyer is a character, okay? The lawyer that she has is incredibly compelling. He's this like really over the top like southern gentleman lawyer. He's like he gets up on stage and like draws like he has a projector and he just draws everything he says in real time, so it's like extremely like visually like compelling, whereas the meta lawyers are like stone faced, very matter of fact, and actually being very nice to her. Like the meta lawyers are like very sweet, very patient, like asking her questions, which by the way, like it's so obvious that like meta is not the problem in her life. Like it's crazy, but anyway, so she testified yesterday. So there's a lot of like straightforward coverage, right? You would expect it. I saw it. I'm writing about some of it. Then I got to this LA Times article and a bunch of reporters, I'm going to give you some inside journalism tea. A bunch of reporters have been talking about this LA Times article because for people that were there, this LA Times article describes things that didn't happen. So let's talk about it. First of all, the framing. Remember what I was telling you guys in the previous segment about how they're trying to frame this as this like feminist thing to like, that we know that actually these social media bans and all this social media addiction framework is actually like a lot of stigmatizing stuff against girls. This is the same stuff about like selfies and whatever, right? Where like when they used to argue that women taking selfies were, taking selfies if you were a woman was turning you into a narcissistic psychopath and all this stuff. Anyway, so gender could play a decisive role in landmark LA social media addiction suit. So these two writers write it, and I'm baffled. First of all, this is the least neutrally written article. This is like fan fiction level stuff. I'm shocked that an editor let this through. Ladies of the jury dabbed their eyes, sniffling as the 20-year-old on the witness stand described the hours she spent trying to fix her face before appearing in court that morning. Her view of herself irreparably warped by what she characterized as decades of addiction to YouTube and Instagram. Okay, do you think her decades of time on Instagram and YouTube made her want to fix her face before appearing in front of the entire national media and a major trial? Like, what? Like, actually, I think if anyone had to go up and testify, by the way, testify about things that they told their therapist when they were 15 years old and have to go in front of like what? Like, I had 50 reporters from every single major national news outlet. Yeah, I think you would actually like spend a really long time doing your makeup that day and doing your hair. Anyway, she says, whenever I got a bunch of likes, I was really happy and it made me feel good about myself. If I didn't, I would feel insecure like I looked ugly. Okay, that's fair, but that's not a social media problem. You could say the same thing about stepping outside. You could say the same thing about like really anything. Whenever I put my poetry out into the world and it gets a positive reception, it helps my self-esteem. If it gets a negative reception, it makes me feel sad. Okay, so should we ban poetry? One alternate juror wept openly during the testimony, wiping her tears on her sweater. So this is stuff that I'm really wondering because I never saw this happen. And a bunch of other reporters are speculating too that they never saw this happen, which is interesting. And there's no video of this happening. Kaylee's lawsuit is a test case chosen from among hundreds alleging that social media apps were designed to snare young kids and keep them hooked. First of all, yeah, they are. Obviously, that's what they do. They harvest massive amounts of our data. If we want to fix that problem, we should pass comprehensive data privacy reform, not allow them to harvest more data. As Landmark closes out its first month, gender has emerged as a dividing and perhaps decisive factor in the case. So it talks about basically like her bad body image. And this is just like crazy because like, again, every single day I was on it all day long. And they actually have her screen time and she actually wasn't on Instagram that nearly as much as she's describing. I can't stop. It's just too hard to be without it. Every time I've stopped, I've been unsuccessful. Okay, so you have a bad habit that you could change, but you are having trouble changing it because you're thinking of it as an addiction, which I made a whole video on if you guys watch. But so this is like really crazy because this never happened. This flat out never happened. This part I remember specifically because like that question I remember him asking. So women on the jury bristled when Meta attorney Andrew Stanner needled Kaylee's former therapist over her credentials during a tense cross-examination on Wednesday. You have a master's degree, right? Men in the gallery laughed at the barb. No, they didn't. So here's what's weird. I read this and I was like, wow, that's crazy. I don't remember any of this happening. And then I was talking to some other reporters and they said that they heard from other reporters that they also didn't remember it happening this way. Not to say that he didn't ask a question saying, you have a master's degree, right? But that's how he asked it. He said, you have a master's degree, right? That's not a barb. It's really weird. It's really weird. So anyway, so it's like very weird. They're like framing it in this very weird way. And, you know, like, I don't want to like fat shame her or anything, but she says like, I look so fat while panning the camera over her slender torso. She's a kid, right? So she's feeling self-conscious. I totally understand feeling self-conscious about your body, but that is again, wait until you heard what life was like in the aughts. I was a teenager in the 2000s, in the aughts. Like that was such a significantly more brutal time for women's body images than today. It's bizarre. And so, like, it's not to say that she didn't feel horrible about herself, but I think that her feeling horrible about her body might have a little something to do with her mother calling her fat all the time and weighing her daughter constantly. And this is just like really weird. Like, I'm just like, a lot of this is written very flowery over the, like, I don't know how this story got through. Female jurors watched with rapt attention, some gasping in shock. I never heard a gasp. Several men on the jury looked away, one yawning. Like they're trying to make it this like weird gender thing. Like the female jurors like, oh, and the man jurors didn't even care. I saw everyone. Actually, to be honest, the jurors were really zoning out. Like, I mean, they've had to sit there for days and days and days. It's just really weird. And so this shift could be, I mean, they're basically trying to speculate like how the jury is going to go. The young woman told the jurors Thursday she began using Instagram's built-in beauty filters when she was 9 and soon found her unedited image repulsive. Again, wait until you find out what teen girls were reading in magazines with airbrushed photos. And also, like, again, it's sad what happened, but like, okay, so yeah, attorneys for and notice how they like frame it so strangely. Attorneys for Meta and YouTube owner Google have sought to portray Kaylee's suffering as the natural outcome of a troubled childhood. They have pinned much of the blame on her mother, who raised Kaylee and her siblings alone after splitting from Kaylee's violent father when she was 3. Meta attorney Phyllis Jones showed jurors Instagram posts, text messages, and ephemera from her high school years in which Kaylee portrayed her home life as intolerable. I don't feel safe in my home, but I have nowhere to go, and I don't want to go into foster care. Does this sound like an Instagram problem? Jones also played 2 tapes in which Karen can be heard screaming and cursing at her daughter. And then, of course, these supporters who knows how much, I'm very interested to know who's funding some of this stuff. I mean, it's just horrible. But anyway, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, her mother pulled over on the side of the highway and told her daughter to like get out of the car at one point. And then I guess these parents were like, oh, I've done that. Okay, well, that's not good. Anyway, long story short, I think it's really weird. I don't really understand this framing. I don't want to hate on other reporters, but there's just a lot of like colorful language that to me shows the kind of bias in some of it, where they're obviously kind of dramatizing her testimony, trying to make her seem like a victim when myself and a million other reporters were at that trial. And I think that the descriptions of some of those jurors' reactions, maybe I just missed them. Maybe I just wasn't watching the jury close enough. But I do think that the descriptions and the sort of the dramatized way that it's written is intended to elicit a certain emotional response. And I don't think that it's as responsible. Not to say that these two, I don't want to, you guys also need to understand that editors make changes to things too. So maybe I shouldn't even criticize these two reporters necessarily. Like, so much work goes into producing stories. We don't know how the story came together. But I think the point is to, when you read the media, note these things and note these types of language shifts and just take note of it and realize kind of what they're trying to elicit to you, especially with the gender framing. It does read kind of tabloidy. But yeah, anyway, I was so horrified, like, to learn all of the stuff that I learned about her family life and the fact that she grew up in an abusive home. And I just think, like, again, what has more of an effect on a child's mental health, do you think? I mean, please use your brains here. Their abusive and violent father abandoning them when they were 3, going on to then further cause abandonment issues throughout childhood by treating them terribly. The girl is then forced to live in a home with a violent and abusive mother who fat shamed her, who body shamed her. Her sister had an eating disorder, by the way. And then the sister also tried to her own life. Do you think all that had an effect on her? Or was it going on Instagram and making fan edits on a video page, which is what she was doing? Like, it's just not an accurate representation of the nuances of this girl's, the causes of her mental health issues. And they're letting a lot of abusive parents, I think, get rich off this stuff. Like, they're letting, all of this kind of like, all of this like charade and stuff, it's rewarding like abusive parents. I mean, we talked about this in the last episode, but there's another woman whose daughter, I don't want to redo the same segment I did last time, but like, the daughter took her own life. The daughter was a trans girl who took her own life. And the mother said that the daughter died twice. First, when she started using social media, which I guess the mother thinks is responsible for her becoming trans. And second, oh no, the daughter didn't take her own life. It was the girl that was stabbed to death. That's right. It was the girl that was stabbed to death. That's right. She was stabbed to death in a hate crime. And the mother said that social media is to blame for her daughter's death because I guess the daughter died and then she's been dead naming her daughter the whole time. And then the other woman that was interviewed out front of this case, who was talking about how beauty filters, caused her daughter to, potentially caused her daughter to kill herself. And meanwhile, the daughter was growing up in an extremely rural, isolated town with seemingly no support. And the mother, when asked why, what her daughter won't get to experience, the first thing she brought up was marriage. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know. We don't know that those, what the deal is with those other two parents, but certainly in this situation, certainly in this social media addiction case, the mother and both parents, it sounds like, were horrible sources of pain for this girl growing up. And the fact that now that this daughter is willing to participate in this dog and pony show that might make the mother rich, now the mother's being nice to her daughter again, is really, really something. It's really bad. And it's why we should stop listening to this stuff, right? It's why we should stop listening. And, these people that bring, it's like, who's printing these signs? Who's funding these trips? Anyway, it's all of this stuff. It's like, if we want to help children, banning Instagram would not have done anything to get this girl, this poor girl, out of a violent and abusive household. Banning Instagram, banning social media for everyone, including LGBTQ youth, would not do anything to improve her life in any way. It would have just cut her off further. It would have made her further isolated. She wouldn't have any outlet to express herself or talk to friends. She wouldn't be able to be doing video editing, which is how she makes a living, is doing social media management, video editing and social media management. Do you think, like, that's what's so crazy to me? It's like, okay, so you were addicted to social media. You're out here claiming it's harm, and yet you're trying to make a living in video editing and social media management. Like, it's crazy. And yeah, if anything, I think Instagram kept her, able to speak out and vent and document some of the atrocities that her mother was engaged in. But this lawsuit could end up affecting a lot. This lawsuit could seriously affect, LGBTQ youths and other people. Like, that's the thing, is that we know social media is such a lifeline, especially for abused children. It's often how they get help. Online communities save people's lives, especially marginalized kids. And yet and that's what's so insidious, makes me have a little less sympathy for this girl, although she's a victim. It's really the mother that doesn't deserve sympathy. The outcome of this, because she is willing to do this, the outcome could be mass restrictions for all youth and adults including, and that could end up leading to so much more devastation, so much more, so many more kids taking their own life. Just horrible. It's horrible.